Good morning, everyone. Oh, thanks for whoever hit record. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ashley Mott. I'm the GIS director at Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, and this is our August meeting of the GIS Data and Technology Group. And I'm joined today by Allison Bednar, who's our GIS analyst, and then Megan Blanchard, who's our coastal ecologist. And I'm going to get started here. All right, so a quick meeting agenda. First off, welcome, and I appreciate you all joining. I see a lot of new people on the call, so that's really exciting. If you would drop your name and affiliation in the chat, that'll just help me to keep track of who's joining. And then once you all get settled in, I'm going to start with a quick recap of our group's goals. I haven't talked about that in a while, so I just wanted to review that since there are new folks on the call. And then I'm really excited about today's speaker. We have Xan Fredericks from USGS on the call. Xan's the National Geospatial Program Delivery Lead and the Emergency Response Coordinator. So I know that her talk is going to be meaningful to all of us on the call. And then after Xan wraps up, we're going to kick it over to Allison, who's been putting together what we're calling our GIS Internship Inventory. Allison's trying to make connections between you all, whether you're at a city, a county, a regional agency, something like that, and link you up with internship coordinators at our regional universities and colleges. And then if we have time at the end, I was going to go over our group survey results that we took way back in February. I just didn't have time on last meeting to go over that. All right, so our group goals, and I'm going to run through this just really quick. So basically, we started this group. It's because of what is called our Regional Resilience Action Plan at the Regional Planning Council. The action plan is a plan that has various directives in it. And one of the directives is to convene the region on geospatial technologies and GIS data. So that's the main reason why this group exists. But, we definitely want to serve our member governments, especially our TBRPC counties and cities, and connect you with folks like Xan today so that they can provide you with technical assistance. We're also providing educational opportunities for member government staff. Some of you are going to be coming to the TBRPC offices later this month and do a NOAA coastal inundation mapping class. So that's really exciting. I'm looking forward to meeting you all in person. And then a couple other things that this group aims to do is to leverage our connections in our group for regional projects, whether that be like some sort of data consortium, or maybe it's getting together on a grant opportunity. And then also, we want to use this group to explore and document geospatial technology trends. In past meetings, we've talked about, geo AI and that kind of thing, your drone programs in the region. And then finally, we use this group to identify and resolve regional GIS data gaps. All right, so with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Xan. Xan, rather than me introducing you, I thought it would be best if you introduce yourself and let the group know who you are and what you're all about.
Absolutely. And with that, I'll just go ahead and start screen sharing. And that way we can get rolling. I'm just going to share the entire screen and then hop in. I think that'll be easier. Does that look good to you?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me today. My name is Xan Fredericks. I work with the U.S. Geological Survey with the National Geospatial Program as the Emergency Response Coordinator. And in that role, I chair the Geospatial Information Response Team for the entire USGS. Now, I recognize many names on the call. I'm very excited. Previously, I was a national map liaison for Florida. I got my start at the USGS as a contractor back in 2007 in the St. Petersburg Coastal Marine Science Center, so in the Tampa Bay region. So it's really special to be able to come back today and especially talk to this group. My start was in topobathymetric LiDAR for pre and post hurricane assessments. So coming full circle back to emergency response made perfect sense. And it's somewhere where my heart has been ever since the beginning, especially having lived in Florida for almost 20 years. And experiencing the myriad of hazards, especially those hurricanes. It was a neat opportunity to be able to pull upon all of the great contacts I've made in the past, as well as really work with the people in the area, because it's very different once you've experienced the hazard. Doing hazard response, if you haven't, is a little different. And I feel like people are a little too removed from it sometimes if they haven't had to go through it themselves. And so I just feel very fortunate that it all came together. So today I especially wanted to talk to you about resources for response. We're in the middle of hurricane season, I'm sure you know, but from the National Geospatial Program, one of the resources that you're probably most familiar with is the national map. And it's this idea that we're trying to provide authoritative topographic information for the nation, whether it's through elevation or hydrography. But there are also so many other data sets available through the national map. These are all available free of charge, without use restrictions. You see, we've got the geographic names and transportation, structures, boundaries, orthoimagery, land cover, trails. And one way of accessing them, especially for you familiar with GIS, is through the services. So if you weren't familiar that there are services for all of the national map data, be sure to check out apps.nationalmap.gov/services. It's a great repository. It's one I have bookmarked oftentimes. If you're like me, I have my map, my symbology, my way of visualizing things that I'm familiar with, and it's a lot easier for me to ingest things into mine, to make it easier for me to interpret, especially during emergency response when time is of the essence and you really need a quick way of assimilating that data. Sometimes it's just easier to add it to your own map rather than going to someone else's application or something like that. So I just wanted to remind you that the services are out there. And if you ever have any questions regarding the national map, regarding 3D elevation program or the 3D hydrography program, I really encourage you to take advantage of the National Map Liaison cadre across the nation. Adam Bentham right now is your Florida National Map Liaison. You'll see it's been so fluid lately, so dynamic. We've been working to cover multiple different roles within the USGS, similar, I'm sure, at your level of government or locality or region, or city or academic or private sector, right? Wherever you're sitting, we're all feeling that shift, that change right now in the landscape, if you will. And so Adam's a really good hydrography resource. He comes from New England. He was part of the hydrography Water Science Center, so he's got great knowledge, which is especially useful. When I was the liaison, we were really focused on that 3D elevation program, and for me, that was great because LiDAR is my background, so I could really answer some of those nitty-gritty technical questions. If you ever want to talk LiDAR, I super still geek out about it. But how cool is it that we've got Adam Bentham, someone with a water background, while we're really working toward this 3D hydrography program data set. I think it's an amazing resource to have for sure. And I mentioned that changing landscape, and boy, for hazards, right? Talk about a time when it changes. And this is just, I love how this always comes together in my mind, because the tagline for the US Geological Survey is science for a changing world. And it doesn't change much more than during a hazard, right? Whether it's erosion or eruptions, which, okay, Floridians might not be, having to worry about too much. Plate tectonics, earthquakes, and even landslides. The earth as we know it is constantly moving, it's constantly changing, and during a hurricane, boy, we've got all of those situations going on, whether it's like the erosion or the accretion or the storm surge coming in, the inundation, the flooding, in so many different ways. And one of the ways that the USGS wanted to make sure that our scientists could continue responding and continue doing their science during a hazard was to create this geospatial information response team. And so the primary role that we serve is to make sure that our scientists have all the geospatial data they need to continue fulfilling their mission no matter the circumstance. Now, when we accumulate all these resources from across the USGS, across different regions, across different mission areas, many of those resources are publicly available. So it was really important for us to be able to make sure that these were accessible, not just to USGS scientists, but also to the general public, right? Our taxpayers, me, myself, right? As a taxpayer, I want to be able to make sure I can access these data that we've paid for, if you will. But it's also an interesting way and challenge that we've had that I'm sure a lot of you experiences as the scientists are doing some of their data, some of it needs to be, it is provisional, right? It hasn't gone through the checks and balances yet, the QA/QC, so we haven't quite gotten it to a place where we can release it yet. So some of our data sets are still held inside until we can get them published. But again, we had so many data sets that were available to the public, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to serve those out. And I know Kim was on here at one point and she was talking about the statewide LIDAR initiative. And boy, does Florida look good with all that statewide LIDAR available now. And now we're working with that the tip about the metric data coming in and to have that model available soon. And so specifically because LiDAR is my background and a little passion point, and because you have all these great data sets available to you now and look forward to the tip of Valley data coming in, I wanted to talk about how we leverage LiDAR specifically for emergency response. If you ever wondered, I checked it out today. There is an Entwine data set. Those are the ones that allow you to view our LiDAR point clouds online without having to pull it to your system. And if you navigate to usgs.entwine.io, it shows you all of the 3DEP repositories, all these LiDAR data points that are being served for the USGS. And I only bring this up because today I noticed that the ticker was at over 81 trillion LiDAR data points being served. 81 trillion. That number just blows my mind. So I looked up, and if we account for the current estimated US population and I divide that trillion by the millions of US people, we would each have over 237,000 LiDAR points at our disposal, each. Within the USGS. Now, of course, you have access to all 81 trillion if you're so inclined. But I thought that was so cool. And when you think about having 237,000 points, let alone the 81 trillion, you might be thinking, okay, but what can I do with it? What's so useful about having all these LiDAR data available to me? And especially when it comes to hazard response, I wanted to touch on a few of these at least. Fires, you may have been hearing Spokane in the news lately. This is actually a digital surface model coming out from the Eaton fires that was out in LA County last year. And it was just this terrible situation where these fires are running through the valley. And we were able to get some donated LiDAR data in and get it modeled. This is just a hillshade grayscale digital surface model of an area before the Eaton fire. And why this is very impactful is check out the after. Again, still a digital surface model. This is not, we stripped off the vegetation and this is a digital elevation model, like bare earth digital elevation model. This is a digital surface model. Let me go back for a second. The before and the after. Now, in this case, this was really important to be able to provide situational awareness because a lot of people, because the fire had been contained at this point, they wanted to get back into their homes, right? To see what they could salvage, what was left, and just start to kind of try to rebuild their lives. But it was really important. This area was at the bottom of a slope, a hillside that had also been impacted by the fire. And we were able to use these data to help LA County make sure that they weren't in a possible chance of debris flow area in case the first rain came through. With all that vegetation gone and all that debris sitting there, especially with that slope, it's really important to let these people know, like, hey, you are still at risk even though the fire has passed. there are still more risks that you're going to encounter. So, digital surface model is just one way to really impress upon senior leadership, too. Here's where we need to send resources. Here's an assessment of how much damage was done to know if we need to request additional data sets. Here's where it would be safe to go check on some of the assets that you might have in the area. Here's where you can't evacuate people in order to get them to the public service works or hospitals, things like that. So fires are one way that LiDAR is used to support hazard response. Another one is floods. I don't know if you guys remember Hurricane Harvey. This came over Texas, over the Houston area, and it just sat there. And it just continued to dump so much rain. Our USGS scientists went out and collect high water marks. And it's just, you go out, you see a debris line of where the flooding and then the inundation had hit that highest peak. Sometimes it's just, you see seeds and debris on the side of an overpass per se. And you go in and you survey in that elevation. And so in this graphic, it's depicted by that little red circle to the right of Beaumont, the Beaumont label. And by having that elevation, we're able to take this digital elevation model, this bare earth model, and color anything at that elevation and lower on the DEM blue, in this case, to show the extent of the flooding. This is really helpful, especially if you see that little gray island. There's two of them kind of sticking out in the middle of that. Some people may be like, hey, we don't have to evacuate, right? Like certain parts of St. Pete or Tampa are like, hey, we're not in an evacuation zone, or we're evacuation zone E or whatever it is. But you will be an island, right? Like you still won't be able to evacuate or go get resources or more fuel for your generator if there's fuel to be had. And it will be very difficult for emergency responders to get to you. So again, it's really helpful to help people visualize exactly where the flood extent will have been based on those high water marks. Another area from Hurricane Harvey is around Bridge City. This is a little more residential. And again, they're cut off from all of those resources. So unless you have a kayak, or unless, right, you've got some friends that are gonna boat in to come get you and help you out, I don't know of a better way of showing people like, okay, we understand that you think you don't need to go, but in this instance, please don't be one of those people that has to be rescued and put our first responders at risk. Final one for Hurricane Harvey is around Port Neches. And again, just to see the extent of this inundation for planning purposes, especially afterward, right? Whether it's for infrastructure or public works in this case, it's a very powerful way, a very simple way to convey the message of here's where the risk that we're facing with certain inundation levels, or hey, we got 20 inches of rain and here's what that could equate to. So we talked floods, we talked fires. Another one is hurricanes. This is in Puerto Rico. Hurricane Maria hit in 2017. I'm sure y'all remember, right? Irma, Maria. Oh, it was a good time, wasn't it? And for Puerto Rico especially, this is out on the northwest side of Puerto Rico. And I brought this image up specifically because this is a karst terrain. And I know Florida is very familiar with the possibility of sinkholes. So what was interesting with this is we had some scientists use 3DAT data in order to see where there is sinkhole susceptibility in that northwest part of Puerto Rico in case they received really heavy rains, which happened to happen during Hurricane Maria. So what was cool about this is you could totally see these cone-shaped karst elevations. But then as you moved northward, it's an agricultural plain, but it's underlying, right? You totally see where these depressions are. So we were able to share with the farmers, like, hey, you really need to make sure that your cattle or livestock are secured if there is a heavy rain event coming, because these may open up. And then we were able to make this file just showing where there are higher areas of sinkhole susceptibility. And that was really impactful because Hurricane Maria, similar to Hurricane Harvey, it dumped so much rain that she caused over 40,000 landslides on Puerto Rico. I mean, and Puerto Rico is not that big. So imagine 40,000 landslides across that terrain and trying to prepare for that and trying to wrap your head around that it's not just um, the rain or the flooding that you have to worry about, but also the ground, again, moving underneath your feet. And so, speaking of landslides, out in Oso, Washington, there was this really big landslide back in 2014. And here's a digital surface model. This is kind of what you'd see if you looked at imagery, right? Okay, you can totally see where the land has fallen, all that debris. You could do a volumetric change analysis, right, and kind of identify how much debris had gone down. But say that you are a scientist and you wanted to go out and check the soil moisture at the bottom of the debris field because you're like, hey, if I know the soil moisture there, will I have a better understanding of other areas that may be similarly impacted? And you're like, oh, I'm just going to have the field team go in and let's say they come in from the left of the image and like head right in. The power of LiDAR, unlike an image, is that we could strip off that surface. Look at that whole other depression to the left of the landslide that it was totally obscured by that vegetation. Similarly, if you saw that in an image, you wouldn't be able to assess a safe route into getting your measurements or sending your field team into getting those measurements. But by stripping off that vegetation, we're able to see. We have that power to look underneath. And I think that's a really important use of LiDAR during emergency response. Now, you may be wondering, okay, so we've got these data sets, we've got the LiDAR from the national map. And the Geospatial Information Response Team, as I was saying, we pull resources from across the USGS. It's not just the national map. We want to try and make this as robust as possible. One of the ways we do that, if you think about all of those resources as tributaries, I like to think of the GIRT as the delta. GIRT, Geospatial Information Response Team. We're accumulating, we're collating, and then we're disseminating those resources back out to the public. And how do we do it? By a hub. Just like many of you, it's just an easy way to kind of consolidate that information and serve it back out. So we've got a hub site. You'll see in the upper right, you can navigate to hazards. It's just a drop down with some of the hazard types available. The data, we're working on it, just like any other technology. We hit a little hiccup, but once we have that data tab up and running, it will simply be all those data services available to you that we're using in our open maps. So you hit our hub site and you're able to navigate to different cards based on the hazards. And then we also serve up some links to additional resources that we think are really useful, especially if you navigate to one of the hazard cards at the very bottom. We have resources from NOAA and NASA and Army Corps, and we're going to add census. We just worked with them. They've got some really good resources. Some additional ones from USGS, depending on what kind of hazard it is. We want to point you to that natural hazard mission area site or, you know, those subject matter experts that have collated their own resources for you. So the idea is if you do land on our hub site, you can jump to wherever you need to go. The important part during an emergency is that you can get the data you need when you need it, not to, you know, have any kind of close hole on that. Now, I will say, I mentioned some of these data are provisional. So it's one of those where if you open up one of our cards in our maps and you're not signed into the USGS AGO space, you'll see what is publicly available. And then for those of you that have USGS accounts, then you sign in and you'll be able to see the provisional to USGS data. So it's simple. There aren't multiple maps that you need to navigate to or anything like that. You'll see what you're able to see that you have rights to. Again, some of the provisional data, in addition to provisional data, we've got commercial licensed imagery, right? We work with the NGA and NRO to pull in some of that commercial imagery. Depending on the license agreement, we aren't able to share that out publicly. So it's a nice way of being able to protect that license agreement and also that provisional data. So again, I just covered fires, floods, hurricanes, and landslides. Volcanoes and earthquakes, not quite as applicable to Florida, but you can imagine, especially from the LiDAR standpoint, what we could do with it, but also the additional geospatial resources that are available for those. What's really fortunate is Kim, anytime there's an activation, Kim Jackson, the Florida GIO, she'll invite USGS Geospatial Information Response Team to have a moment during the response calls to kind of provide an update, not just from, again, what we're doing at the USGS or what we're aware of, but what we're aware of across the federal agency and landscapes. If we've heard something on the FEMA response call that's coming in, and they're talking about remote sensing imagery or remote sensing assets that are going to become available, we try and report anything that we've heard coming from the landscape. Similarly, we meet monthly with NASA disasters, NASA DRCS. They're a great, I want to call them friends. They're not just colleagues. We meet during Blue Sky to realize, hey, this is something we're working on, so you don't need to. That's something you're working on. Fantastic. Can we leverage that? It's that idea of dividing and conquering. It's really important in order to really be efficient and maximize our reach anytime that we've got these resources that we can share and redistribute. So anytime that we have information, we're able to share it across. But similarly, I want to put this up here for you. Please reach out if there is something that you're looking into or are unsure about. We may not have the answer for you, even if it's from another federal agency, but please know that we are a resource standing by. We love to help. That is part of what drives us, what keeps us going day by day is knowing that we have some phone friends that you might not have time to even reach out to. So if you just drop us an email at that gs_manager at usgs.gov, we're happy to try and dig into something for you. Please understand during a response, we may be a little slower to respond, but it's one of those that it never hurts to ask. We don't know exactly what might be useful to you or what you might be looking for, right? We don't have a crystal ball. So if you could let us know, that's one of those things that if we could help influence some of the data within the national map, if we know part of our tools that you're like, wow, it sure would be great if we could see this layer on that map, shoot us a line. We iterate constantly. The whole goal of this is to make this as useful as possible for the people on the landscape that are trying to do their work. And while we serve the national map data and resources, we're happy to incorporate other useful resources. Some of our maps, they're so multivariate that not every single layer is turned on because otherwise it looks like the kitchen sink, right? It's very difficult to kind of ascertain the theme of the map. So make sure you open up, expand those layers and see if the layer is there. It might be. If not, again, we're open. There's no ego in emergency response. If we can make it better, let's make it better. We really do. I bet you wouldn't be the only person wanting to make it better. And we also are happy to come and either give demos on specific tools that we have. We work closely with the National Map Liaison. We can always tag team if there's something that we could go into it. But if it is, a question for a different mission area within the USGS, again, they're all our friends and colleagues. We've got great relationships. We're fortunate for that. And if there is anything we could ever help with, I do encourage you to reach out. I just wanted to throw this up there too. These are just some of the resources that I went through today. That's my contact information using the QR code and my email address. Thanks for the time. I am happy to take any questions. I could talk LiDAR all day, but I wanted to make sure that I left enough time for Ashley, for you to be able to get through your updates, and then also just to facilitate any questions and kind of have a conversation. If there's anything that you can think of that I can help with immediately, or just any questions or suggestions that you guys have.
Hey Zan, this is Corey Denninger at Swift Mud. Good to
Hey,
see you.
Corey, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I
Good.
was I was wondering if you were involved in any conversations. I know your position has changed, but are you part of any conversations that are happening in Tallahassee about FDOT and kind of the bill that passed last year and imagery and LiDAR being part of that and discussions
I
related to that?
haven't been. Is there a
Okay.
particular piece of that that I could look into for you?
No, not necessarily. Just wondering if you had any conversations with the state level because the bill kind of implied that DOT would take control of these products at the state level, but then
Okay.
there was a report that was required to be produced, and it was, but it kind of left some ambiguity, and some of the recommendations weren't, they were kind of ignored. So I don't know, there's just a little bit of uncertainty. I can certainly, find out in other avenues, Kim, Jackson, and others. I just wasn't sure if you had some details.
Sure. I think they would have, if anyone had been looped in. Previously, Joe Baker was the Florida liaison, and
Yep.
she just went on detail.
Yep.
And so that's where Adam's coming in to cover. But I get to talk to Joe pretty frequently. So Joe may be our best point of contact there. She may be familiar with something. So I'm happy to ask her and let her follow up with you if there is something that she could share.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have questions for Xan? Yeah, if you haven't been keeping track of the Zoom chat, most of what Xan has here in her last slide has been posted, but I'll make sure that it ends up in the chat, at the end. I'll get these all in text links for you, and I'll share the chat and all that Zoom material stuff after the meeting. Xan, I wanted to say thank you. And one of the things that you shared was really impactful to me. It was those inundation extent maps that you shared are so simple, but like really effective. So I'm going to be stealing that for sure. And one of the things that you mentioned that I'm very glad that came up was the state emergency operation center calls that you do with Kim Jackson. I posted that information for the group in the chat. So I find those really helpful for finding resources when, there's a hurricane on the way. And just want to open it up again if anyone has any questions for Xan.
I have a quick question for Xan.
All
Hi,
right.
Xan. I'm Kate Norris.
Hi, Kate.
I work at the Geoplan Center at UF. We're also the Florida Geographic Data Library.
Very
I
cool.
teach essentially a graduate level GIS 2 class as well,
Yeah.
and it's for people majoring in planning. And I
Very
thought a
cool.
lot of the LiDAR examples you used were really helpful, especially for my students, where we have a section where we kind of discuss LiDAR and
Mhm.
its use. And I was wondering if you had something um, that was kind of like the discussion we just had, where it was like a short 2 to 3 minute video that already existed,
Mhm.
or if not, if I could steal the information from this and just kind of post it to the class, just that section on you discussing LiDAR and its uses, those
Absolutely.
6 or 8
And
slides or whatever.
I'd be happy to come and talk to your class if you think that would be helpful, if they want to pull a thread, right? Like, please feel free to use this as you will. I don't have a 2 to 3 minute video, but that's a really good idea. And I'm going to write that one down because I kind of love that. And then I could kind of put some bookends on it to keep it a little shorter so it makes more sense. But please feel free to use this information as you will. But again, I've definitely hopped into a few different classes at the graduate, master's, and PhD level just because you never know what the individual students might want to follow up and ask. So if that is ever anything of interest, I'd be happy to do that too. But please
Okay,
use these.
thanks. I'll send you an email.
Okay, thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
Like we have one question in the chat. What is one book you would recommend for others who are passionate about geospatial data surveying and emergency management, technical or otherwise?
That's a great question. The emergency one I haven't looked into yet. What I will say, it's not a book, but I was just talking to my supervisor. This just goes to show how much I still have to learn. I learned from every single person I interact with, which is amazing. And I'm so glad that he brought it up yesterday. I didn't realize FEMA on their website have these ICS courses. And he was like, oh, be sure you take 100 and 700. And then I was like looking, and they're free. I think 100 is like a 2 hour course, and then 700 is maybe 3.5 hours, or I might have those backward. and I'm really excited to go on and take these virtual courses because it's about instant management, about the national framework and things like that. And he'd mentioned it as like, oh, obviously you know this. And I was like, I was like, no, I don't. But how cool is that? So one, I'm going to check those out. So I can't speak to if it's a great resource, but I bet it is. So I'm excited to do that. So maybe we'll be doing that together. Another one is, I think it's ILIF. It was a datums book. And when I started, geodesy was like so ungraspable for me. I think that's the easiest way of saying it. And I really had to get a better understanding of it. I was post-processing LiDAR, right? And without an understanding of um, datums and geoids and orthometric, all this stuff, like it would have been pretty hard for me to visualize. I'm a very visual person, and I really needed to understand how these differing um, not just the projections and datums, right? But how different parts of the Earth are represented differently. And I think this is going to be really important as the NSRS comes out. That it just was very useful, and it was like the best explanation of datums that I've ever seen. And I don't have it sitting next to me, but I have it on my bookshelf. So let me go pull that really quick as you finish up your thing, and I'll get you the actual name and the thing, because that for me, I still go back to it often. I know enough geodesy now to be dangerous. But it was so helpful for me, and it was one of the best explanations of it. It made it much more, it just made much more sense. So between that book and then again the FEMA resources for specifically emergency response, I think those would be the two resources that I would mention. And I think that's a great question, Ashley. I hope others, if you guys have a favorite book, if you'd enter it into the chat. I'm always looking for resources. I think it's fabulous the different ways that people present the same topic helps me see it from different perspectives, and that's huge in emergency response. It's really important to see what whomever you're helping respond to something, how they're looking at the situation, because otherwise I might be giving them something that is not helpful whatsoever. So I'd love to have a better understanding of different approaches and different perspectives of emergency response specifically. So if you've got any resources, please do put them in the chat. I'd love to learn more that way.
Awesome. Thanks, Ann. Last call for questions. Okay. If anything comes to mind before the end of the meeting, please speak up or drop it in the chat. Thanks again, Zan. That was a really awesome presentation. I got a lot out of it. The other thing I wanted to mention was just the fact that you talked about that Entwine service. I didn't know about that. I also put that in the chat. That's kind of life-changing for me, actually.
And actually, I'll share this really quickly one more time just so you guys see it. That bottom link, the LiDAR Explorer, is one of the coolest applications. It lets you dig into LiDAR point clouds like without ever pulling it to your thing. Just look for a little green circle, and that jumps you right into that Entwine point tile service, and it lets you visualize right on the screen and change all kinds of things. That might be another good demo. So you just let me know. And if you ever want to demo the LiDAR Explorer, I'd be happy to come on individually too. If you guys are like, hey, tell me more about this LiDAR Explorer, just call me up or send me an email and we'll get you taken care of.
Awesome. Okay. Let me reshare my screen here. Very slowly. All right, here you go. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So actually I'm going to kick it over to Allison. Geez, I shouldn't have shared. Allison, do you want to go over this really quick, this slide, and then you can share the document if you want? Right.
So over the last 2 months, I've been reaching out to local universities that have a GIS program or have GIS classes available to see what the need and expectations would be for GIS internships. So I wanted to make that connection between our local schools and universities and us, all the professionals on this group, to hopefully increase partnership and collaboration. One of my goals of this year is to increase my GIS young professional engagement and try and make those connections. So I will share my screen with what I have put together. You'll see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. So I've started collecting from each of these universities. So I emailed any representative I could find for a contact information for us to have, what the student experience levels would be in GIS, what expectations they have for obtaining an intern, and if there are any events that would pertain to internship hiring or would be good connectors for us. So thus far, I'll just slowly scroll who I've reached out to. We have University of Tampa. They were super, super enthusiastic and were super interested in connecting with us. And I reached out to both the Environmental Studies and Department of History, Geography, and Legal Studies. I went to UTampa and I took GIS in the Environmental Studies department, so I'm very familiar with their expertise. And then I knew that there was it was politically based GIS class. So I did reach out to their history department and they are getting back to me. So I know both departments at UT are interested. USF, great resource. School of Geosciences, I'm not sure if anyone on the call is with us right now, but they gave me lots of contacts. MERP, I see Patrick's on our call. He's our fellow right now. He's with the MERP program. I reached out to Barnali with the Geospatial Analytics Lab. Eckerd had a great response. University of Florida. And then I'm waiting to hear back from Hillsborough Community College, College of Central Florida, and St. College. So with this, I wanted to ask you all if there was any other information from universities that you would like to know, and if it would be okay if I started reaching out to you all and your organizations to have some information to give back to the university context so that they can provide a resource to their students. I think a lot of them aren't sure of what's out there for GIS young professionals. So it'd be great to create that connection. And with that, in November, I'm going to be reaching out to some of these university contacts to have them come in and speak about what their GIS program is like at these schools, what their expectations are, and anything else you'd like to know. So this is our time to help me shape what the internship guide would look like and what kind of information you'd like to get out from the November meeting. And Kate, I don't know if you wanted to take this opportunity to ask your question about the internship. And Eric, I will definitely reach out to Nova. That's a good one. I reached out to St. Leo. They didn't have any GIS courses on. They're, just they didn't have any GIS with St. Leo, but Nova's a good one. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, I think I'm just wondering because we're always trying to update our course because everything's always shifting and moving. And everybody has like a new employee or a new intern in the GIS field. And so I'm wondering, is there some skill set that's lacking when these students are coming to you that you wish they knew, or sometimes it's really particular to your area, but we have students that are going to look into that. So if you're interested in going to this field, you should know these basic things. So if there's a couple basic things you feel like are being missed, it would be really helpful to know that. I I am in the Department of Urban and Regional Planning, so I'm teaching GIS to that realm. I'm not in the geography department. So, there are different things happening at different schools. So that's also a thing to consider. But that would be really good to know from everybody. Is there something lacking? Is there something missing? Is there something that's new that we're not like teaching that you wish we were? Thanks.
Yeah, Kate, I would just say like the fundamentals about datums, projections, and coordinate systems. Like I find that that's a big gap for people that have taken even like a GIS certificate, like having a firm grasp of, what projection to use if you want to, like say you want to measure acreage or something like that. That's like a big one that I find to be lacking.
That's good to know. Um, I always find that, so I teach a GIS 2 class, and they start to cover projections in the GIS 1, and then they get to our class and they're like, oh, but we already learned about projections. And we're always kind of telling them, no, you didn't. And so it seems like for some reason that's a hard concept for the students to grasp, even. And I know this happens less frequently where you get a data set and it has a projection, but maybe it doesn't come with the projection file and how to define it and then how to reproject it to what you need. And so that's something we're always trying to teach. And we're always trying to teach, get to make sure you're getting your data into the same projection, all your data sets in the same projection before you start to work and do analysis with them. And then how to access the calculate geometry tools and where they are. But also, with our previous meeting, we started talking about how the projections are changing and so how that's going to impact stuff. So that's another thing that we kind of have to start to talk about in 2027, how there's going to be, those new projections to deal with. So,
Yes. Yeah, we've been thinking a lot about that, talking about it a little bit. And, I reached out to the National Geodetic Survey. I think his name's Nate. Um, and trying to think about that logically. Is that, us essentially reprojecting all of our data, the 2D and then the 3D, because there'll be two different ones, once Esri publishes that. And you know what I mean? Is it that simple? Is that what we're doing? Because we've never really gone through this before. We did a little bit with the vertical NavD88 stuff, but not like, all of our layers and feature classes we have on our SDE and things like that. So I think that's kind of where our head's at. And then we have a lot of gauges and structures and things that have benchmarks on them. And, those gauges will have to be converted from, either 29 or 88 over to this new datum, which they're calling, 2022, interestingly enough, even though it's not out yet. It's coming out, I guess, this year. But, and the names are interesting too. They're quite long. The like NavD88 is kind of short, but these other ones have like 5 or 6 7 letters in front of the year. But yeah, that's kind of where we're thinking about.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's a conversation to be had there too, because a lot of organizations have historic data. So how are they going to go back and are they going to reproject all the historic data to the new, or are we going to just, when we go through the process, I mean, when we want to compare things and changing, like how things are changing from, year to year or decade to decade, I think it's a lot for us to start to like wrap our minds around.
Definitely. That might be a good person, Ashley. I can send you his name. Oh, he was on here before, wasn't he? Was it Nate
Uh, yeah,
from
I
NGS?
I can't remember. Yeah, the last meeting. I'll have Allison post all the last meeting material,
Okay.
like the YouTube and all that, because I think that would also help Taylor out, who was asking about like all the geodesy stuff. Taylor, last meeting we had an NGS geodesist on, and he was going through
Yeah, I was so
like the update.
excited about it and I missed it. So
Oh,
that's why
yeah, no
I made sure I
worries.
made it to this one.
All right, awesome. Yeah, like that. I just, if you have time to watch his talk on the YouTube recording, it might be helpful.
I definitely
Um,
will. Thank you.
yeah, for sure. Uh, Kate, is it all right if I
Can
move
you
forward?
guys post that link? Because I think it'd be really helpful for a lot of us to rewatch what he said, because I think it was very dense and very important.
Yeah, looks like Allison just posted that in the chat.
Thank you, Allison.
All right, thanks,
The
Allison.
the first one's the YouTube and the second one's all the meeting materials.
Okay. Sorry to be pushy. I'm just gonna move forward because I want to make sure I stay within the hour. I wanted to mention some upcoming events. The South Florida GIS Expo is happening in West Palm Beach next week. Allison's going to be there, so if you're going to be there, make sure to say hi. And then also the Central Florida GIS workshop is happening next month in Orlando this time. I think typically they have that in Daytona Beach, so it's a little closer to home this year. And then I don't think Shannon's on the call today. Shannon, if you're there, just speak up. But Shannon helps to organize the GeoFlow Summit. That's November 12th in Largo. It's at the, oh gosh, I forget what the name of the park is. It's like a Pinellas County Park and the
That's
IFAS
Botanical
extension.
Gardens.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
yep, it's at the UFS like extension office at the Botanical Gardens.
Yeah, that's right, Courtney. I went last year. They had it at that location. It was such a nice meeting space for that size of group. And then also it was really awesome to just relax in the gardens, like on breaks. So it was a really cool spot. And I thought the summit last year was really cool. So look for any information on that. And then Allison, did you want to talk through the newsletter?
Yes, I will be continuing the post-meeting newsletter. It's going to include all of our meeting materials, the YouTube recording, and then just some data or project spotlights, any GIS events. So I'll include all of the conferences that we just mentioned and GIS job openings. I will say I have been scouring LinkedIn, so I do have a list of job openings. But if you have any others to share, that would be fantastic, or any other GIS data or project spotlights that you'd like me to mention in addition to Zan's presentation.
Thanks, Allison. And then finally, this was just, I was pushing kind of hard because I wanted to talk about this because a lot of you were really kind enough to spend a few minutes in February just filling out our survey because we want to make sure that this group is working for you because the group is it's designed for you. So we want to curate the speakers and everything we're doing to serve you. So I had, like a bunch of questions in the survey, but here's a quick summary. So it sounds like what's working for the group is you're liking the speakers, which is awesome. And then seeing what others are working on in the region. Like last November, we did lightning talks from our group members, which was really cool. And then, of course, we've had, folks on the call like Kate and Corey and others who have presented that are working within our region or supporting our region. And then, we'll keep sharing those GIS events when we can and through the newsletter. And we definitely want to always be keeping our eye on what data needs you have. That's part of what the Regional Planning Council does is we want to fill in those regional data gaps, like often to solve novel problems that your GIS team, maybe you guys just, that's not in your purview. We can help with that. So let us know. And then you're also liking the networking within the group, which is great. And then we got a bunch of suggestions that we want to attack, and like some of these are already happening. Allison last year had developed like a group member network, and this is totally voluntary, so if you don't want to do it, but I think we're probably try to flesh that out a little bit more so it's easier to look at and digest that information. And then you were wanting us to host more local speakers, especially group members, which I agree with, and then assist with identifying GIS internship opportunities. Allison just went all over that, so That's great. And then I liked some of these speaker and topic suggestions that we got from you all. Asset management and GIS for utilities are something we have not talked about. So I think that would be good to find some speakers to support you there. And then, of course, emergency operations. We've had some of that, but more will be better. So we'll work on those goals. Oh, and that's it. So I'm glad we made it through everything in time. I'll hang out after 11 if anybody wants to stay on and chat. But we'll probably stop recording unless anybody has something for the entire group. I'll give you a minute to respond here. Thank you again, Xan, for your presentation. I don't know if, I see you're still on. So thanks so much. That was really great.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. All right, with that, I'm going to stop recording. Or somebody can help me stop recording.